Are you haunted by the ghost of someone who is already gone? You replay memories, hoping for a different ending, but only find more pain. Today, we will explore 10 ancient Stoic rules wrapped in a timeless story to break these invisible chains, take back your mind, and finally let them go. The sun was sinking below the horizon of the Aegean Sea, casting a bloody hue over the white marble of the city. For most of Athens, this was an hour of respite, a time for wine and laughter in the cool evening breeze. But for Lucius, it was an hour of dread. The silence of the coming night only amplified the deafening noise in his own mind. It had been 4 months since Valeria left. 4 months, yet it felt like yesterday. She had simply packed her belongings, kissed him on the cheek with a cold, terrifying finality, and walked out to marry a merchant from Corinth. There was no grand betrayal, no fiery argument he could anchor his anger to, just a quiet shift in the winds of her affection, leaving Lucius stranded in a dead calm. He sat on the stone steps of the amphitheatre, a parchment in his lap, unread. He had spent the entire day locked in a labyrinth of what-ifs. What if I had been wealthier? What if I had listened more? What if I had stopped her at the door? His thoughts were a spinning wheel, grinding his spirit down to dust. "You look like a man trying to carry the ocean in a cracked jar," a voice rumbled from above. Lucius looked up to see Ariston, an older man known in the Agora not for his wealth, but for his impenetrable tranquility. Ariston wore a simple, rough-spun tunic. His face was weathered, mapped with the lines of a life that had seen both profound suffering and profound peace. He was a student of the Stoic philosophy, a lineage of thinkers who believed that true freedom came not from conquering the world, but from conquering the mind. "I am carrying nothing, Ariston," Lucius muttered, looking back at the sea. "That is precisely the problem. I am empty." Ariston lowered himself onto the cold stone beside the young man. "Empty? No, my friend. You are burdened. You are carrying a corpse on your back and complaining about the smell." Lucius bristled. "Do not mock me. You know nothing of what I lost." "I know that you lost a woman," Ariston said gently, "but you did not lose your mind. Yet here you are, surrendering it willingly. Tell me, Lucius, if a thief broke into your home and stole your finest silver, would you then hand him the keys to your entire estate and invite him to burn it down? Of course not. That would be madness. Then why do you let a woman who has stolen your heart return every day to steal your time, your peace, and your future?" Ariston leaned in, his dark eyes piercing through Lucius's misery. "There are rules to this universe, Lucius, laws of nature and laws of the mind. You are suffering because you are breaking them. If you wish to be free, you must learn the discipline of letting go." And so began Lucius's instruction in the Stoa, a profound journey into the architecture of his own suffering. Rule 1. Radically accept the dichotomy of control. The next morning, Ariston took Lucius to the bustling shipyards of Piraeus. Men were shouting, ropes were snapping, and massive wooden hulls were being subjected to the chaotic, relentless force of the sea. "Look at the shipmaster," Ariston instructed, pointing to a scarred captain barking orders as a sudden squall rolled in, violently tossing his vessel against the docks. "Is he crying at the sky? Is he begging the wind to blow in his favor?" "No," Lucius said. "He is ordering his men to secure the lines. He is adjusting the sails." "Exactly," Ariston nodded. "The shipmaster knows the first and most fundamental rule of a tranquil life, the dichotomy of control. He divides the world into 2 categories. In the first category are the things he cannot control: the weather the tides, the sudden snapping of a mast. In the second category are the things he can control: his preparations, his commands, his own courage. Ariston turned to Lucius. You, my boy, are standing on the deck of your ship, screaming at the wind. You are agonizing over Valeria's choices, her feelings, her departure. Are those things within your control? Lucius looked down. No. Oh, I tried to change her mind, but it was set. Because her mind is hers, Lucius, not yours. Epictetus taught us that the chief task in life is simply this: to identify and separate matters so that we can say clearly to ourselves which are externals not under our control and which have to do with the choices we actually control. Ariston placed a heavy, calloused hand on Lucius's shoulder. To wish for her to return when she does not want to wish for the past to unhappen, is a rebellion against the universe. It is madness. You must embrace amor fati, a love of fate. Do not merely tolerate that she is gone. Accept it as a necessary thread in the tapestry of your life. The moment you stop demanding that reality conform to your desires, the chains begin to loosen. Rule 2. Sever the illusion of ownership. They walked away from the docks and headed toward the city's botanical gardens. The scent of blooming jasmine was thick in the air. Why does it hurt so deeply? Lucius asked, his voice cracking. It feels as though a part of my own body has been severed. It hurts because you suffer from a delusion, Ariston replied candidly. You suffer from the illusion of ownership. Ariston paused by a beautiful, vibrant rose bush. He gestured for Lucius to look at it. If I pluck this rose and give it to you, does the rose belong to you? Yes, Lucius answered. And when it wilts in 3 days and turns to dust, will you weep and say, the universe has robbed me of my rose? Lucius frowned. No, I know that a rose is meant to wither. It is the nature of the flower. Then why do you not apply the same logic to human beings? Ariston challenged. We move through life believing that our lovers, our friends, and our children are our possessions. We say, my woman, my man. But they are not yours, Lucius. They are on loan from the universe. Everything we have is borrowed, and the lender can recall the loan at any time, without warning and without apology. Lucius felt a sharp resistance in his chest. Are you saying love is meaningless? That we should care for no one? I am saying love is a profound privilege, precisely because it is temporary, Ariston corrected. When Valeria was with you, you should have rejoiced in her presence. But you must never mistake a temporary gift for a permanent possession. Epictetus said, never say of anything, I have lost it, but I have given it back. Has your wife died? She is given back. Has your estate been taken away? That too is given back. Lucius repeated the word silently. Given back. She was not stolen from you, Ariston concluded softly. Her lease in your life simply expired. She has been returned to the world from which she came. When you sever the illusion that she was yours to keep, you sever the grief of her departure. Days turned into weeks. Lucius practiced repeating Ariston's maxims, yet the nights remained treacherous. When the sun went down and the distractions of the city faded, Valeria's ghost would return. He would see the way she smiled when she read poetry, the specific tilt of her head, the warmth of her hand in his. He would wake in cold sweats, his heart racing, having dreamt that they were still together, only to have the crushing weight of reality collapse on him the moment he opened his eyes. He confessed this failure to Ariston one afternoon in the bustling marketplace of the Agora. I understand the logic, Ariston, I know she is not mine. I know I cannot control her. Yet my mind defies my reason. I cannot stop the thoughts. They flood in like water through a breached hole. Ariston stopped by a stall selling dried fruits and herbs. He picked up a completely desiccated, dead olive branch that had fallen from a nearby tree. He handed it to Lucius. "Take this," Ariston said. "I want you to carry this dead branch with you all day, and every hour I want you to pour a cup of fresh water over it. Protect it from the sun. Whisper sweet words to it. See if it will grow olives." Lucius stared at the dead stick in his hand, then at his mentor. "Are you making a fool of me? It is dead wood. Watering it will do nothing but waste good water. Rule 3. Stop watering the dead plant." Ariston smiled a sad, knowing smile. "And yet, you are far more foolish with your own mind, Lucius. What do you think you are doing when you lie in bed and replay old memories? What are you doing when you ask mutual friends how she is faring in Corinth? What are you doing when you imagine scenarios where she realizes her mistake and comes running back?" Ariston tapped the dead branch. "You are watering a dead plant. You are pouring your most precious, vital resources, your time, your attention, and your emotional energy, onto something that has no roots, no life, and no future." Lucius felt a flush of shame. It was true. A part of him was deliberately keeping the pain alive because the pain was the last connection he had to her. If he let go of the memories, he let go of her completely. The Stoics understand that where attention goes, reality follows, Ariston explained, his voice taking on a firm, authoritative tone. You cannot control the initial thought of her popping into your head. That is a reflexive impression. But you can control whether you pull up a chair and invite that thought to stay for dinner. Ariston instructed Lucius on the practice of cognitive withdrawal. When the memory arises, do not fight it. Fighting it only gives it strength. Instead, recognize it for what it is, a ghost, an echo. Say to yourself, "This is a dead branch," and then, deliberately pivot your attention to what is in front of you. Withdraw the water. Starve the illusion. If you stop feeding the fire with the logs of your attention, eventually the embers will burn out. Rule 4. Examine your impressions. Later that evening, they sat in Ariston's modest courtyard, eating a simple meal of bread and olives. The mentor was not finished. "Tell me about Valeria," Ariston suddenly asked. "Describe the woman you mourn so intensely." Lucius's eyes softened, a tragic, romantic glaze washing over them. She was perfect. Her mind was sharper than any scholar's. She possessed a grace that made other women look clumsy. When she loved me, I felt like I was walking among the gods. There was no flaw in her, Ariston. I have lost the ideal woman. Ariston laughed out loud. It was a boisterous, unapologetic sound that echoed off the stone walls. Lucius looked offended. "Forgive me, Lucius," Ariston said, wiping a crumb from his beard. "But you are not mourning a woman. You are mourning a phantom. You are worshipping a false idol created by your own unchecked imagination." Ariston leaned forward, his demeanor shifting to that of a strict tutor. "Marcus Aurelius, an emperor, yet unborn to us but whose spirit resides in all Stoic truth, will tell himself to look at things as they truly are, stripped of the stories we attach to them. When he sits at a grand banquet, he does not see a majestic feast. He says to himself, 'This is the dead body of a fish, the dead body of a bird, the fermented juice of a grape.' He strips away the illusion to see the naked reality. Ariston pointed a finger at Lucius. You must do the same with Valeria. You have painted her with the brush of divinity. But she is not a goddess. She is a human being. A human being who snores, who has bouts of selfishness, who makes irrational decisions, and who, ultimately, decided she preferred the comfort of a wealthy merchant's gold over your affection. The words stung, but they were precise cuts meant to drain an infection. The Stoic practice of fantasia requires us to objectively examine our impressions. Ariston continued. Make a list, Lucius, not of her imagined perfections, but of the reality. Remember the times she ignored your counsel. Remember the trivial things she argued about. Remember the coldness with which she finally left. Strip away the romantic veneer. You are pining for a fantasy that never existed. Once you see her as merely a flawed human being who made a choice, the spell she holds over you will break. Lucius realized with a startling clarity that his mentor was right. The Valeria he missed was a curated masterpiece, a museum exhibit of all her best qualities, while all her flaws and the agonizing reality of her departure were conveniently cropped out of the frame. He had been worshipping a statue he carved himself. The seasons shifted in Athens. The oppressive heat of summer gave way to the crisp, unpredictable winds of autumn. Lucius found himself applying Ariston's teachings daily. He stopped asking about Valeria. When the urge to romanticize her arose, he violently stripped the memory down to its bare, unglamorous facts. He was gaining ground, inch by bloody inch, yet a new poison began to seep into his veins. As the sadness retreated, it was replaced by a dark, simmering rage. He found himself pacing his room, furious at how easily she had discarded him, furious at the Corinthian merchant who had bought her affections, furious at his own wasted time. He brought this anger to Ariston on a day when the sky was bruised purple with the threat of a violent storm. They were walking near the Parthenon when the first heavy drops of rain began to fall. Rule 5. Forgive the departure to free the self. They took shelter under the massive Doric columns as the sky ripped open, pouring a deluge onto the marble streets. "I am angry, Ariston," Lucius shouted over the roar of the rain. "I have stopped mourning her, but now I loathe her. I hate her for the injustice of it all. Why should she be happy in Corinth while I had to suffer here, rebuilding my mind from the wreckage she left behind?" Ariston watched the rain wash over the steps of the temple. Seneca tells us that anger is a brief madness. It is the most destructive of all passions because it tricks you into believing you are powerful, while in reality you are making yourself a slave. Ariston turned his gaze to Lucius, his eyes stern. "Do you think your anger hurts her? She is in Corinth, sipping wine, completely oblivious to your fury. Your anger is a poison. You are drinking yourself, hoping the other person will die." Lucius clenched his fists. "So I should just forgive her? Let her off the hook for betraying my trust?" "Forgiveness has nothing to do with her," Ariston said sharply. "It has everything to do with you. As long as you hold on to this rage, you are tethered to her. You are letting her live rent-free inside your hegemonicon, your ruling center, your inner citadel. Every time you seethe with anger, you are handing her the keys to your tranquility." The old philosopher stepped closer, his voice cutting through the thunder. "The Stoic does not forgive because the perpetrator deserves it. The Stoic forgives because the Stoic deserves peace. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. If she was callous, you be compassionate. If she was disloyal, you remain steadfast in your own virtue. But do not bind yourself to her through hatred. Cut the cord of resentment. Let her vanish into the indifference of the past. Lucius felt the tension in his shoulders, a tension he had carried for months, begin to tremble. The realization was profound. His hatred was just love turned inside out. Both were forms of intense attachment. To truly let go, he had to reach a state of apatheia. Not a lack of emotion, but a serene indifference to things outside his moral purpose. He had to release his grievance. Rule 6. Shift from the past to present duty. The storm intensified, the wind howling through the columns. Water began to pool around their sandals, threatening to flood the lower platforms. "Help me secure these loose stone benches," Ariston commanded suddenly, pointing to several heavy, unmoored slabs of marble near the edge of the colonnade that were being violently nudged by the floodwaters. "If they slide down the steps, they will crush anyone walking below." Lucius, startled by the sudden shift in focus, rushed to aid his mentor. The stones were incredibly heavy, slick with rain and mud. For the next hour they grunted and strained, pushing the massive slabs against the sturdy pillars to lock them in place. Their muscles burned, their tunics were soaked, and the biting wind lashed at their faces. Finally, the last bench was secured. Panting and shivering, they retreated deeper into the temple's shelter. Ariston wiped the rain from his eyes and looked at Lucius, who was gasping for air, rubbing his bruised hands. "Tell me, Lucius," Ariston said, his voice surprisingly calm amidst the storm. "While we were moving those stones, while your muscles screamed and the rain blinded you, how much did you think about Valeria?" Lucius paused, catching his breath. He blinked in realization. "Not once. Not for a single second." Ariston smiled. "Exactly. And there lies your ultimate salvation. Action in the present is the antidote to the poison of the past." Ariston pointed out at the chaotic city below. "You have spent the last 4 months living in a time that no longer exists. You have been a ghost, haunting your own memories. But nature demands that we live here, in the eternal now. The mind cannot simultaneously obsess over a past injury and fully engage in a present duty." He tapped Lucius on the chest, right over his heart. "You want to let her go? Stop trying to empty your mind of her. That is a fool's errand. Nature abhors a vacuum. Instead, fill your mind with a new, demanding purpose. What is your duty, Lucius? Are you a scholar? Then write something that will outlast the ages. Are you a citizen? Then serve the people of Athens. Are you a son? Then honor your family." The philosopher's words rang with an undeniable truth, cutting through the final layers of Lucius's self-pity. "Do not wait for motivation to strike," Ariston warned. "Do not wait until you feel better to start living again. Action precedes feeling. You build your character and your recovery through daily, disciplined duty. When you are entirely consumed by the noble tasks of the present moment, the shadows of the past have nowhere left to hide." As the storm outside began to break, parting the dark clouds to reveal the golden light of the afternoon sun, Lucius felt a similar break in his own mind. The oppressive, suffocating presence of Valeria was receding. Not because she was forcefully evicted, but because he was finally choosing to occupy his own soul again. Winter descended upon Athens with a bitter, biting chill. The vibrant greens of the olive groves faded into a dormant, ashen grey, and the Aegean Sea turned into a churning expanse of dark, unforgiving water. For Lucius, however, the winter felt less like a death and more like a purification. He had thrown himself into his duties. He worked alongside the magistrates in the agora, he studied the ancient texts with a ferocious hunger, and he trained his body in the palestra. Yet there were still moments, Usually in the dead of night, when the hearth fire burned low to embers, when a hollow ache would echo in his chest, the obsessive thoughts had been banished, the anger had been drained, but a lingering sadness remained. It was the quiet grief of a man mourning a future he had meticulously planned, only to have the blueprints burned. He confessed this lingering melancholy to Ariston on a freezing morning as they walked through the Kerameikos, the ancient cemetery of Athens. The path was lined with marble steles and monumental vases marking the graves of generations past. The wind howled through the silent stones, carrying the scent of frost and salt. Rule 7. Meditate on your mortality. Memento mori. Ariston stopped before an ornate gravestone. Carved into the marble was the relief of a young woman, no older than Valeria, bidding farewell to her weeping family. "Look upon this, Lucius," Ariston commanded, pulling his woolen cloak tighter around his broad shoulders. This young woman had lovers. She had dreams. She had arguments and passions. And now, she is dust. The worms do not care how beautiful she was, and time has erased whatever heartbreak she suffered. Ariston turned and pointed down the long, winding avenue of tombs. Thousands lie here, generals who thought their empires would last forever. Merchants who hoarded gold they could not spend. Lovers who swore they could not live without each other. They are all gone. And one day, very soon, you will join them in this silent earth. Lucius shivered, though not entirely from the cold. The Stoic practice of memento mori, remembering death, was blunt and terrifying. You feel a lingering sadness because you still value this loss too highly, Ariston explained, his voice softening just a fraction. You are acting as if you have 1,000 years to live. You treat your time as if it were an infinite resource, squandering your precious, unrecoverable days, mourning a woman who has moved on. Marcus Aurelius will one day write to himself, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." Ariston stepped closer, his dark eyes locking onto Lucius's. When you truly realize how brief your existence is, the pain of rejection shrinks into insignificance. Is this how you wish to spend your finite moments under the sun? Pining for a phantom? When the ferryman comes to take you across the river Styx, will you boast to him that you spent your one singular life being miserable over a girl in Corinth? The words struck Lucius like a physical blow. The absolute absurdity of his prolonged grief was laid bare. He was letting the sands of his life slip through his fingers while staring at a closed door. "Death is the ultimate clarifier," Ariston said, turning back to the path. "When you feel the ghost of Valeria creeping into your mind, remember the grave. Let the icy reality of your own mortality shock you back into the present moment. Your time is running out. Do not waste another breath on someone who does not value it." Rule 8. Anchor your worth in your virtue. They walked in silence for a long time, leaving the cemetery and entering the bustling, noisy streets near the agora. They passed a lavish estate where a wealthy politician, known for his corrupt dealings and miserable temperament, was yelling at a slave over a spilled pitcher of wine. "Observe him," Ariston murmured, gesturing subtly. "He has all the wealth of Athens, an obedient wife, and the favor of the crowds. Yet look at his face. He is a slave to his anger, his greed, and his insecurities. He has everything, and he has nothing." Ariston guided Lucius to a quiet stone bench beneath a leafless fig tree. "For months, you have secretly believed that Valeria's departure diminished your value. You thought to yourself, if I were better, smarter or richer, she would have stayed. Her leaving means I am lacking. You have outsourced your self-worth to the fleeting opinion of a single mortal woman. Lucius looked down at his calloused hands. It is difficult not to feel inadequate when the woman you love chooses someone else. It is only difficult because you misunderstand what true wealth is, Ariston countered sharply. The Stoics believe that the only true good is virtue, wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. Everything else, wealth, health, reputation, and the romantic love of others, are merely preferred indifference. They are nice to have, but they are not required for you to live a noble and flourishing life. Ariston tapped Lucius firmly on the chest. Your worth is not determined by who loves you. Your worth is determined by your character. Did you love her honestly? Did you act with integrity? Are you striving to be a good, rational man? If the answer is yes, then your fortress is secure. Lucius felt a profound, grounding shift within him. He had been begging outside the gates of his own soul, asking Valeria for permission to feel valuable. Epictetus teaches us that no one can hurt you unless you allow them to, Ariston continued. Valeria did not take your virtue when she left. She did not take your courage, your intellect, or your capacity for justice. She only took herself. If your character remains intact, you have lost nothing of true value. Anchor your self-worth in your own actions, your own choices, your own virtue. When you rely solely on yourself for your validation, you become invincible. No woman, no man, no empire can take away what you have built within. Spring finally broke over Athens, painting the hillsides in vibrant strokes of emerald and gold. The air was sweet with the scent of blooming almond trees, and the city hummed with the chaotic, joyful energy of the festival of Dionysus. Lucius walked through the market, his stride purposeful and light. His body was hardened by winter training, and his mind was sharpened by philosophical rigor. He no longer felt like a cracked jar. He felt like a solid marble pillar, firmly rooted in the earth. As he passed a merchant stall selling imported silks, a familiar face stepped into his path. It was a traveling courier from Corinth, a man Lucius vaguely recognized from his past life with Valeria. Lucius of Athens? The courier asked, reaching into his leather satchel. I have a sealed letter for you, from the household of the merchant, Gaius, from his wife, Valeria. Lucius stopped. The world around him seemed to quiet for a fraction of a second. The courier held out a small scroll, bound in a purple ribbon, Valeria's favorite color. 6 months ago, Lucius would have snatched the letter, his hands trembling, hoping for a confession of regret, an apology, or a plea to return. He looked at the parchment now, feeling the weight of it in the courier's hand. He felt a small ripple in his chest, an echo of a past life, but it was distant and entirely manageable. He paid the courier a small copper coin, took the letter, and walked toward the quiet refuge of the Stoa, where he knew he would find his mentor. Rule 9. Embrace the obstacle as the way. Amor fati. Ariston was sitting on the steps, bathed in the warm spring sunlight, carving a piece of olive wood with a small knife. He looked up as Lucius approached, immediately noticing the purple-ribboned scroll in the young man's hand. Ariston raised an eyebrow. A ghost reaches out from the underworld. A letter from Corinth, Lucius said, his voice steady. He sat down beside the older man, turning the scroll over in his fingers. I have not opened it. Are you tempted? A part of me is curious, Lucius admitted honestly. But it is a detached curiosity. I no longer feel the desperate need to know what she thinks of me. Ariston set his knife down. Do you know what the uninstructed man does when his heart is broken? He curses the gods. He drowns himself in wine, becomes bitter, and lets the trauma make him smaller, crueler, and more afraid of the world. The philosopher pointed a calloused finger at Lucius's chest. But you didn't do that. You brought your shattered pieces to the forge of philosophy. You learned the dichotomy of control. You learned to master your impressions. You anchored your worth in your own virtue. Ariston smiled, a rare, radiant expression of genuine pride. The Stoic does not merely survive adversity, he uses it. The obstacle becomes the way. Marcus Aurelius will tell us that a blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it. Valeria's departure was the heavy log thrown onto the fire of your life. It could have smothered you. Instead, you used it as fuel. Lucius looked at the letter, and a profound realization washed over him. He wasn't angry anymore. He wasn't even indifferent. He was grateful. If she had never left, he would have remained a soft, unexamined man, dependent on her whims for his happiness. Her betrayal was the catalyst for his awakening. She had unknowingly handed him the greatest gift he had ever received. His own independence. I do not hate her, Lucius said quietly, a serene smile touching his lips. I bless her for leaving. She broke me so that I could rebuild myself stronger. Rule 10. Relinquish the desire for closure. Ariston nodded slowly. Then there is only one final lesson, Lucius, the ultimate test of your freedom. He gestured to the scroll. What will you do with the letter? Lucius stared at the parchment. Many men would read it to find closure, to know why she left, to hear an apology, to finally have the story wrapped up neatly. Ah, closure, Ariston scoffed softly. The greatest illusion of the human heart. We beg our betrayers for an explanation, hoping their words will somehow act as a balm to our wounds. We believe that if they just explain themselves, or apologize, the pain will vanish. We demand that the person who broke us be the one to put us back together. Ariston leaned in, his voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. Closure does not come from Corinth, Lucius. Closure does not come from an apology, a letter, or a final conversation. Closure comes from within. It is a choice you make. It is the conscious decision to say, I require nothing more from you to move on with my life. The philosopher pointed to a small bronze brazier burning nearby, used to keep the morning chill at bay. If you open that letter, you are handing her the keys to your mind once again. You are allowing her words to dictate your peace. You are admitting that you still need something from her to be whole. Lucius looked at the purple ribbon. He thought of the tears he had shed on the steps of the amphitheater all those months ago. He thought of the dead olive branch, the violent rainstorm, and the silent graves of the Kerameikos. He had walked through the fire, and he had forged an inner citadel that no one could breach without his permission. He didn't need to know if she was sorry. He didn't need to know if she was happy or miserable, or if she missed him. Her thoughts were entirely outside his control, completely irrelevant to his virtue, and vastly unimportant to his future. Without a word, Lucius stood up. He walked over to the bronze brazier. He didn't hesitate. He didn't say a dramatic farewell. He simply dropped the unopened letter into the flames. The dry parchment curled instantly, the purple ribbon turning black and turning to ash in seconds. The smoke drifted up into the blue Athenian sky, vanishing into the endless expanse of the universe. Lucius watched it burn, feeling nothing but a profound, unshakable tranquility. The invisible chains that had bound him to a ghost shattered completely. He was empty, yes, but not with the void of loss. It was the vast, expansive emptiness of a clear sky, ready to be filled with the brilliant light of a new day. Ariston walked up behind him, placing a heavy, warm hand on his shoulder. "How does it feel, my friend?" Ariston asked quietly. Lucius looked out past the city, toward the sparkling waters of the Aegean Sea. For the first time in nearly a year, the world looked incredibly beautiful. "It feels," Lucius said, turning to his mentor with a clear, untroubled gaze, "like I am finally the master of my own ship." Lucius's journey reminds us that true freedom isn't found in changing the past, but in mastering our own minds. By accepting what we cannot control, starving our illusions, and finding worth in our own character, we can break the invisible chains holding us back. You have the power to close the door and finally let them go. If this story brought you peace or perspective, please share this video with someone who needs it, and subscribe to join our community.